If you're in your 50s or 60s and recently been laid off, first of all, I want to say I'm sorry. I have been there just a couple of months ago and I completely understand. I have some previous videos, a couple that I posted on my layoff and my 1 month video, my 2 month follow up video, and where things are now. So if you want to check those out, please feel free to do so. Those videos I focused more on the emotional side of being laid off, which is important because you will go through in a lot of emotional ups and downs during the first few days and weeks of being laid off. Emotions always run really high when you're laid off. At the same time, there's big decisions that need to be made, and while it's not glamorous, it will make a difference in your future when things settle down and your emotions are not so high. So, just to be clear before we start, I'm not an attorney, I'm not an HR specialist, a financial advisor, none of that. I'm just somebody that went through this, and it's kind of my own experience of being laid off. But I needed to do what I did, probably should have done sooner, and those types of things. So I think one of the first things is, of course, you're in shock. There's the emotions of being laid off, but then there's also paperwork that has to be signed. Your employer, your ex-employer, HR will reach out to you. They'll want you to sign any kind of severance agreement. If you've been there for a while, you probably will receive a severance agreement, and you want to look that over really well. Well, it's not exciting to be going over severance agreements when emotions are running high. You could be angry, and here you are reading the severance agreement thinking, you laid me off because of ageism, or you laid me off because you want to find someone cheaper, or whatever your emotions may be at that time. They're going to go up and down. It's normal. Just allow your emotions to come, and but this paperwork needs to be signed. For instance, in my case, I had a severance agreement, and I wanted to be sure that everything was in place before I signed. If you think you've been targeted, like for instance, maybe you're in your 60s and you know for sure you were targeted because of your age. If it's something that you think you can prove, then maybe you might not want to sign the severance agreement, or look very closely in the severance agreement to make sure there's no clauses in there prior to signing that say something like, you can't sue us if you take this severance agreement. That's very common in a severance separation. Companies want to protect themselves, so if you sign it, you can't sue later on. So be sure, if maybe you have a someone that's in a legal background or something like that, without actually hiring an attorney, that can take a look at your severance agreement just to make sure it's up, up to par. And if you have any questions, reach out to HR. That's what they're there for. Know all of these things prior to signing the severance agreement. And paperwork isn't what you want to deal with at that time when you're laid off, but in the future, you will thank you for taking the time if to make sure all your questions were answered. You got what you sometimes you can negotiate severance and get more than they originally wanted to offer you. So make sure everything is up to par. If you know that your severance, you should be getting a specific amount, make sure they didn't mess it up. Maybe you're involved in a mass layoff and it's possible that they messed up. And so make sure all of that is to your liking, in agreement, and you understand everything. Then sign, turn it in. If you have been laid off, you really need to take a look at your finances, like sooner rather than later, if you haven't been really looking at them prior to your layoff. If you think you might be laid off and you're still working, now is a really good time to start looking at your finances. Where you can cut back? Are you paying for things you don't even want, you don't even need, like subscriptions and stuff like that? I went through and got rid of any subscriptions that I had that I didn't really even use anymore, and maybe it was only $10 a month, but $10 is $10, and those things add up over time. So take a look at all of that. Any unnecessary spending, pause that for the time being, and build a realistic picture of your finances. And most importantly, don't panic, because that's not going to do anyone any good. And most of the time, when we panic, well, we don't make good decisions in those times. So regardless of your situation, if you've been laid off, then you really need to take a look at your finances, get a spreadsheet, piece of paper, however you do things, and start plugging in what you pay and look at your bank account of any subscriptions that you have coming out each month, and any that you don't use can do without for now. Pause those, cancel those, however you want to do it, just so you're saving monthly money going out, and you pause that so you're not spending that, especially if you're in a severance situation where you have some weeks and you have some buffer there. It's a good time to say, oh, I need to pause all of these things, so, or I can go to, maybe you have a streaming program or something like that. Maybe you can go to a lesser plan one, or change plans, or however. Phone is another one. If you're paying a lot on your phone, maybe you can do a pay as you go. I've always used that because I don't talk on the phone all that much, and it works for me. And I've always used it, so I didn't really have to downsize anything on that. But it cost me maybe $20 a month, and you're still with the major phone company, but it works for me. If you're on your phone a lot and you use a lot of data, or you use a lot of talk time, then that probably wouldn't work for you. So it just depends on your situation, but anywhere you can cut costs, now's the time to do that. If you've been laid off, or if you think you might be laid off. If you're 62 or older, you do have the option to apply for Social Security, and you can start receiving your monthly Social Security. I will leave the link below so you can create an account. If you don't have one, you can log in and see what your monthly benefit is right now. If you retire, what it will be at 63, 64, 65, all the way up to 70. And if that's something you want to explore, apply for that. It usually takes, I heard, a few weeks. You can also apply in advance. Like if you want to get your payments, let's say in November, you would say to start your payments, I think the month previous. So because you're paid once a month on Social Security. And so that's something you can explore if you are in the US and if you're 62 or older. I think the next big thing, especially if you're in your 50s or 60s, what is your health insurance situation? Does the severance package include healthcare continuance? In my case, my employer, my severance included paying for my health insurance through the end of this year. So basically, it turns into Cobra, and they pick up the 100% of the Cobra payments through the end of the year. And then after that, I will have to seek my own insurance until I'm 65. I'm 63 right now, so I'll have to go an entire year of using the marketplace just to fill that gap until I can get Medicare at 65. And check out spousal insurance. If you're married and your spouse has insurance, can you piggyback off of their, can you join their health insurance? Of course, if you're 65, Medicare is an option for you. If you're younger than that, then Medicare isn't. And so that's when you have to decide how are you going to cover that until it is, or if you're seeking another job, how will you cover that until you begin another job and your employer benefits kick in? Because regardless, you need to have benefits, or you'll be penalized in the US anyway if you don't have medical insurance of some type and when you file your income tax at the end of the year. So that is really, really important. And there are many different examples. I'm just throwing out the obvious ones, and the one specifically that I have experience with, which is Medicare and the marketplace, which I will use until my Medicare goes into effect. I think the next thing is to apply for unemployment. Apply for that pretty quickly, and don't assume that you don't qualify for it. If you're in the US, all the states are different. And by the way, I'm going to leave links for unemployment by state. I'll leave Social Security website. I'll leave all of that in the description below. So that way you have all of that in front of you, and you can look that all up for yourself. But don't assume that you don't qualify for unemployment. It's better to apply. If they deny you, then they'll give you a reason why it's denied. Otherwise, apply for it. Even if you got a really good severance package, it doesn't really matter. They will, depending on state, they will look at it as, depending on if it's a lump sum, depending if it continuation of benefits or payment or pay. and they'll look at that and say and determine how they want to stretch that out. If you got paid for 4 months, will they start paying your unemployment 4 months? And every state is different. Like the state I am in, unemployment runs 26 weeks. Some states it's 12 weeks. Some states maybe it's longer. I don't know. And it depends on the economy too. If the economy is really, really bad, then they stretch unemployment out. We're not there right now, so it's not that way in my state anyway. I think another thing is what I learned is that my emotions were all over the place, especially for the first couple of weeks. They were up and down. And it's like I was in no place at that time to make a big decision, like on my stocks and my stock options, my finances, anything like that. I needed to just take a breath, give myself some grace, and just step back from it and come back to it when my mind was calmer. Because if you're in that panic state and you're in that emotional state of that roller coaster in the beginning where you're up and down, it's very hard um, to make sound decisions that one day you'll look back on and think, oh, I'm glad I did that. I messed up and I screwed myself out of stock options or out of, some severance or whatever the case may be. So really think hard about that. You might be given some stock option information from your employer if you've been there a while, and if that's something that they offered while you were there, you'll have some leverage there where it depends on if you're a private company, public company, will the company go public at some point? Um, and will that affect you in any way? Find out all that information before you sign anything, because that all has to do with your future finances and your future well being. I think another thing is when you're laid off, the emotional side of it, of course, is the rug's been pulled out from under you. Everything is gone. Everything you've built is gone. The people you worked with every day, gone. Everything is gone. But while you were there, you did build friendships. You probably have people's phone numbers, you kept in touch probably outside of work with some people. Reach out to those people if they're still there, if they were involved in the layoff, however, whatever the situation is, but keeping in touch so you can begin to build a new normal. Because now what I felt is that my normal was completely ripped out from under me. I spent 10 years doing the same thing, and all of a sudden the rug is pulled out from under me. Even though at the time I wanted to leave, I didn't want to continue with this job. It was still comfortable for me, and it's very hard to leave when you're making a steady income. You're making you've built this, you know what it is, you don't want to really go anywhere else. And so I was comfortable, and that I think is very normal. And so even if you wanted to leave, now you're laid off and you're thinking, oh my God, now what am I going to do? And you don't want to get into a situation where you sink into a depression because you don't know what to do with your time. That's the worst place you can be at. And so reach out to people that or if you're planning to go back into the marketplace, get on LinkedIn. That's probably the best place these days. And start expanding your network on LinkedIn. Get people that you worked with that maybe they were laid off too. Maybe they're still at the company, and you can still have them in your network on LinkedIn. So that's a really good place to start, and start networking if you are looking for a another job. And I think also important when you are laid off is to make sure you take care of yourself. Make sure you're sleeping. Uh, Make sure you're eating. um, wow, give yourself some grace, because it is a difficult time. It's a loss. It's a loss, like it's a death, because you're not going back to this company, and you will feel that even if you wanted to leave, even if you hated your job, you didn't leave on your own terms. And that was my thing, is that I wanted to leave, but I wanted to do it on my terms. This isn't how I planned the ending to go. However, I think sometimes if I didn't have that push out, I would have probably stayed, which would have been not good for my health, and not good for me overall. So in the end, looking back, for me, it was a blessing in disguise. And it may take you a long time to feel that way. You may never feel that way, and it's okay. Everyone is different. Give yourself some grace. So I think I'll just close with this. Being laid off, it's not just about losing a paycheck. Yes, pay is a big thing when you're laid off, no doubt about it. That is the first thing you think of when you're laid off. It shakes your confidence. it shakes your belief in everything maybe you've built at your previous company, and now they just discarded you. And you may feel that way because I did feel that way. I was like, oh, everything I did, now they just discarded me. And it seemed unfair at the time. And you may go through that too. There is good news to this because when you start taking these steps, you're not rushing it, you're giving yourself grace, you're getting your paperwork done, you're checking your severance, you're applying for unemployment, maybe you're looking for another job, maybe you're planning to retire, looking into Social Security, all of these small steps, it's moving you forward. You're not just sitting there, oh my God, what am I going to do? Every step you take is a step forward in your future and into your next chapter of your life. I think the big thing for me is that I didn't have to solve all of the problems or all of the questions, I didn't have to have all of the answers. I still don't have all of the answers. I didn't have to have those the day I was laid off. And sure, my mind was going crazy. My mind was just scrambling, like, why did this happen to me? I've been there so long, and you will go through that. You'll go through the why me's. Not that you're feeling sorry for yourself, but where do I go from here? And if you've been at your job a long time, the job market looks very different than it did probably when you were looking 10, 15, 20, 30 years ago. It's not the same job market as it used to be. AI is filtering out applications. Even young people are having problems or a harder time finding jobs these days. Companies are being pickier and paying less. That is another big thing to be on the lookout for if you're planning to find another job. Um, Maybe you'll look for part-time work or something like that if you're of the age of in 62 or above where you can actually file for unemployment or file for Social Security, sorry. Just remember you don't have to solve everything today. Take it one step at a time and it will all come together and it will make more sense as the days go on and you're making these decisions. So if you enjoyed this video, please give me a thumbs up, subscribe if you wish, and I hope that you have a great day. Leave some comments below. We'll talk there about anything else that maybe you've been through a layoff and maybe some of the things that you did to help you through it would help someone else. So put it in the comments and we'll talk there. Bye for now.